Is that showing up for you guys? Can I get a little thumbs up? Thank you. Cool. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about trustworthy forecasting. How do we not just sort of make a prediction about the future, which could be accurate, inaccurate, could be well calibrated or poorly calibrated, but what are the ways that we have learned over the last 10 years through various research efforts to increase the trustworthiness and increase the reliability of our forecasting capabilities. So prediction is always difficult, especially if it's about the future. I just want to keep that in mind. But there are some ways that we can make it a little bit easier. Right now, there's a lot of interest in creating science-driven policy. And of course, the test of all scientific theories is their ability to predict the future behavior of a particular system. And this is rendered a lot more complicated when we're talking about not a controlled system inside of a laboratory, but a complex, large-scale social or economic system where the ability to sort of disentangle causal relationships is very tricky, and where we don't have multiple copies of the world. We don't have multiple copies of the US economy where we can run an experiment and implement variable A on one of these copies and variable B on the other and sort of compare the outcome. We just don't have that ability. We only have one copy of the world. So how can we predict the behavior of complex systems in this context? Well, there is some research that was funded by a government agency called IARPA a decade ago. This research program found it was looking for mechanisms, methodologies to improve forecasting through the wisdom of crowds, through the wisdom of collaboration. And the research essentially found that the most accurate forecasts emerge from the aggregation of prediction across multiple perspectives, rather than sort of market pricing. A lot of people will say, well, the market, that's what the stock market does. It predicts the future. It predicts, what will happen to a particular company, what will happen to the price of a particular asset. And so all of these things are sort of baked into the market. Well, it turns out that it's actually more accurate to aggregate predictions through a few sort of techniques, which I'll talk about in a moment. These are actually more accurate than market pricing. So this is sort of some fundamental research that was done back then, and there's been more research subsequently. So this subsequent research has shown that this sort of collaborative forecasting method is the most accurate and is the most calibrated when you can collect all of the predictions, you can aggregate them statistically, you can differentially weight them based on individual track records, you can recalibrate based on the individual underconfidence or overconfidence of individuals, and you can actually give people feedback. So when you actually create the conditions for this type of collaborative team-making forecasting, then you can actually achieve really extraordinarily low Brier scores, which is the measure of accuracy in forecasting. So what we have on the right is an image taken from the prediction platform that I work with called Meticulous, and this is showing all of our predictions over the last 4 years and shows the average Brier score there, which is quite good. And we've followed all of this research in the way that we've designed the platform. We really provide a space for this type of collaborative forecasting where people can share information. And then we do the statistical aggregation on the back end where we know the track record of various predictors, and we can differentially weight them accordingly. So right now, there's sort of a lot of interest and focus in the world on forecasts and on model building. My co-authors and I wrote this piece, which came out this week in Scientific American, about prediction tools and how they can actually save lives right now amidst the COVID-19 crisis. And we really talk about, these are reliable methods. We can generate predictions that can and should inform preparedness and can and should support real-time decision-making once a disaster has taken place. So in response to COVID-19, we've launched the Meticulous Pandemic Project, where we're actually delivering pro bono forecasting and modeling resources to public health and policy professionals. And that comes in the form of live predictions, it comes in the form of a global dashboard, and it comes in the form of forecasting reports. And I've listed some of our partner organizations here at the bottom. So I'll just talk a little bit about one particular case study where we developed a forecasting project for a hospital in El Paso, Texas. The hospital administrators wanted to know the date of the peak of the epidemic in their city. What were the case numbers going to be at the peak? What were the number of hospitalizations going to be? How many ICU beds and ventilators were going to be needed? And what would the economic impact be on the city? And we have all of this, all of these forecasts are publicly available on the site. So if you want to get very detailed, you can go and look at the El Paso project on Meticulous. But I just want to share this feedback that we got from the hospital president last week. You guys nailed it with regard to the initial predictions around peak, new cases, number of hospitalizations, ICU beds and ventilators. Very impressive. So he was actually very, very surprised, I think, to see that a community of forecasters armed with, a little bit of historical data were able to produce highly accurate forecasts. So this is actually the dashboard that we've developed over the last few weeks in response to the crisis, and this is really in service to people like Dr. Lang, who's a hospital administrator, who's a hospital president, but also policymakers and really decision makers anywhere, including individuals and families. So this is a place where we aggregate the most important questions that our community is forecasting on across 7 categories. So global epidemiology, testing and tracking, medical interventions, policy, economy and business, social and political impact, and clinical science. We give everyone the ability for free to create their own dashboard that's customized to the things that you care about the most. So you can follow, questions that are important to you in your community or for your organization. And I'll give some examples. So you can basically gain into any individual forecast through the dashboard. You can look at the aggregate prediction. You can look at the range, the 25% to 75%. So the middle 50%, we're 50% confident that the range will end up being between these two numbers. You can look at the historical trend graph, which can tell you things like, if there have been significant changes on the ground or in the news, or in the development of a particular vaccine, for instance, then the timing of a vaccine availability, the forecast may update. That kind of gives you that historical perspective. And then of course you can customize My Dashboard. You can click that plus sign in the top right corner and add any forecast that you would like to your own dashboard. So just going to give a couple of examples of things that our community is forecasting on right now. The death toll before 2021. Actually, I'll just say that this forecast here is actually the estimate for worldwide infections, before 2021. So the median prediction right now is 412 million. The predicted number of deaths before 2021, you can see in that historical trend graph, we've sort of leveled out and converged on this number of just over 2 million. The timing of vaccine availability, there's been a significant, you can see in the trend graph there. So we're now looking at the vaccine availability potentially, according to the forecasts, looking like it's going to potentially be later than we previously expected. There's now a 26% chance, you can see in the bottom right corner, according to this forecast, that it will occur after April 2023. And this is actually, we have separate questions that are looking at the approval by the FDA and by European government authorities of the vaccine. This particular question is looking at the timing of vaccines administration to over 10 million people. So when will it be broadly available? The question on everyone's mind, how long will this pandemic actually last? So this is a forecast that's looking at the date when we believe the World Health Organization will declare an end to this COVID-19 pandemic. And right now, the median is at December 2021. However, there's a very high estimate, over 40%, that it will actually occur after the end of 2021. We're looking also at economic impact. So this is an estimate around the length of a potential recession in the US, if a recession does occur. And we're looking at over a year, according to these predictions. And you can see in the bottom left corner, this is based on the aggregation of over 350 predictions. You can see the sort of the shape of the probability distribution function, with a peak at 13 and a half months or so. And then, and finally, US unemployment. What is the predicted peak rate of unemployment for this year, 2020? So we're looking at about 23 to 24%, and the community is fairly confident here. You can see a nice bell curve, less than 1%, or rather a 1% chance that this number is going to go above 35%. So these are just some examples of the kinds of questions that you can ask on the platform. Anyone can submit questions. Oh, sorry, there's one more here. Looking at market recovery, the predicted timing of a new Dow Jones record high, 29% chance that high is later than January 1st, 2022. We're looking at late 2021 right now. So I just wanted to share, this is a resource for this community and for individuals and organizations alike. So let's start utilizing this sort of trustworthy forecasting methodology in our policy making and decision making. And I'm happy to take any questions you guys have. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaia. This was really interesting. Tremendous work. Where can we access? Can you send us the link?
Absolutely. So the pandemic site is pandemic.meticulous.com. I'll just drop that here. And the dashboard itself, you can access it from the menu on the site, but I'll just drop it here as well.
Maybe you should have a sharing link in the website so one can share.
Yes, we have a few of those. So if you go into any particular prediction page, here I can share my screen again. So here I am on the pandemic site. There's a lot of activity right now on the ratio of fatalities. So here in the top right corner, I can share on social media. And then of course, Facebook and Twitter and Reddit. This button allows you to embed a widget that will be interactive and live and will give you this prediction trend graph if you'd like to embed this in a blog or another web page. And then on the dashboard itself, so let's say that I want to share this prediction around Californians opting into contact tracing. I can just click this button here and email it or share it on social media or just copy the link to this particular prediction tile. And while I'm here, I can show you, my dashboard here. So this allows you to save the particular predictions that you want to follow. The different dashboard categories have very different types of questions that are being asked. So social and political impact, is looking at things like elections, rioting, school reopening, travel, suicide, births. And if I click on...
What is the sensor that you are using census that you are using to get to the predictions? What is the engine behind? How you do it?
This is a community that is engaged as forecasters, and they've been participating in this process of making forecasts and then getting feedback. So forecasting is a skill that can be learned and developed over time. So what we do on the platform is we look at users' track records. So we have people who are, at this point, extremely accurate and extremely well calibrated. And so when we come up with that aggregate prediction, we differentially weight the input from each individual forecast that's made on the site based on that individual's track record.
So you kind of have a database of the people who do the forecasting, and you aggregate, like, do you have a questionnaire you are sending to each one of them and then collect the information and process it?
So they just participate on it. It's an interactive platform, and so anyone can sign up, become a member, and participate. So people, a monthly newsletter to share news when we add new partnerships and things like that. But people generally, we do have the capability on the site for people to generate reminders if they would like to update their forecast a week from today. The community that we have developed over the years is very, very highly engaged and very passionate. One of the comments that we get is, "This is my favorite way to waste time on the internet." Another of our comments that we is, spending time on meticulous always makes me feel smarter. I'm always learning. The community, it's really quite different from sort of the standard culture on the internet, because everyone has a track record. So there is no benefit to sort of making a big claim without having some reason, to, it's not just based on opinion alone. So people tend to have a very civilized discourse. People are here to learn, share information, learn from each other. And there's this, underlying philosophy where we know that by sharing information and by aggregating across the wisdom of the crowd, we'll ultimately create better information together.
Oh, do you have like a publication, or this is just the place where you are doing everything? Why I'm asking this question? Do you plan on at some stage monetizing and rewarding people who participate? Like, do you have this kind of ambitious?
We do have various events that we run. So, for example, right now we're running a tournament on vaccine timing, and we award prize money for things like both accuracy but also contributions to the discussion. People post predictive models and they share them with the community. So as far as monetizing the platform, we have some product offerings that we have not advertised very much. We do have some grant support that is kind of the primary mechanism for the support of this work right now, because if you are a foundation who really cares about accuracy in resource allocation that's based on something concrete, that is, especially if you're looking at very uncertain things in the future. For example, one of our most active areas on the platform before the pandemic has always been artificial intelligence. So we have probably the most active set of forecasts around AI development, I would say, possibly in the world.
Mm-hmm. What is the size of your community? How big is it?
So there are about 10,000 users on the platform. But in terms of the sort of really, daily active use, we have a core community that's much smaller than that is, making forecasts like literally every day. They're on the site every day. And we do actually have a large number of people who visit the site purely for the purpose of, consuming the forecasts and understanding, where the trends are going, and are not necessarily the forecasters themselves. So those are the folks that we think about as sort of the audience consumers for the predictions.
I left my email here. I suggest we have a separate discussion, because there are many things that we are doing, maybe a good match for you, and we could extend a very interesting support to your activities, because I'm co-founder of public non-profit foundation, and we are building the protocol for this decentralized ecosystems where you can monetize. So we don't take any cut from the ecosystem. So it's 100% yours. But what we do, we really have the mechanisms where you can really reward, your participants for the the value that they're bringing into you. But I don't want to do it here, because this is not the right place to talk about it. But anyhow, I think I see lots of interesting matches that really can be both sides. It can go both ways, because we have resources that you definitely would be interesting to share your the platform and benefit from, as well as I think it could be the other way around. So whenever you have time, let's schedule a call, and we can just discuss this. I'll be happy to present you.
I would love that. Yeah, I'll shoot you a note and maybe we can talk sometime next week.
Sure, with pleasure. Thank you.
All right. And how do you pronounce your first name?
It's Gagik.
Gagik. I'm Gaia.
Yes. Nice to meet you, Gaia.
Nice to meet you too. All right. I guess I'm going to sign off here. I'll see you soon. Okay.
Have a nice day.